Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. May the peace and blessings of the Almighty God be with you. As I have been introduced, I'm the current Vice President of the organization, and I'm a member of the Outreach Committee, which has organized this program. On behalf of the Mecca Center and its entire membership, I welcome you all. Thanks for coming. As we are all aware, our country is going through difficult times. We are more divided than ever based on racial lines, religious lines, and ethnicities. And unfortunately, we are not getting help from, traditionally we get help from, President of the United States. So this harmony and this effort to bring people together has to take place at grassroots level, right here. And the mayors of the small city like ours can play a very crucial role. As far as the Mecca Center is concerned, we have been very active in promoting interfaith unity. We were formed as an organization about 15 years ago. And we were renting a very small hall and conducting our business. But from the first year on, we have been inviting and doing an interfaith unity banquet in the month of Ramadan, in which we invite around 400 interfaith people. We have been doing it every year for the past 15 years. And the last event took place right here in this banquet hall, and Cardinal Grasso was our guest of honor. So our next Interfaith Unity Banquet would be on the 15th of May, 15th of this coming May, in the month of Ramadan. So I would like to invite our interfaith guests to keep the date open and come join us. Give us your contact address so that we can mail you a formal invitation. Mecca Center also has been very active in civic engagement. Last year, in collaboration with the Council of Islamic Organizations of Greater Chicago, we conducted a debate for the candidates for governor right here in this hall. And in a separate event also, we had the candidate forum for the state representatives, DuPage board candidate, and other smaller officials here, right here as well. So without further ado, I again thank you for coming. Welcome. And I think this grassroots level effort has to be there. We want to hear from our mayor how they are going to protect our places of worship, because everybody is fearful, be it a synagogue or a church or a mosque, and what they're going to do about the domestic terrorism, which is on the rise, and majority of this terrorist act are being carried by white supremacist extremists. And to the best of my knowledge, there is $0 allocated to look into this kind of terrorism. I'd like to hear from our candidates on this as well. Once again, thank you for coming, and welcome to Mecca Center.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum again. Peace be with you all. Good evening. Again, my name is Salwa Sambuli, and I will be the moderator for tonight's community forum with the two Burridge mayoral candidates. Very quickly, I'm a board member of trustees here at the Mecca Center, and I also serve on the Civic Engagement Committee, which is a relatively new committee intended to increase engagement and awareness on key issues impacting our congregation as well as our greater community. And so I reiterate Dr. Moeddin's welcome to everybody here. Before introducing the candidates and allowing them time to speak and present their vision for Burridge, I did want to clarify to everybody the framework of tonight's forum, along with the rules of the event that both candidates have agreed to. This is not a formal debate. This is a community forum where each candidate will be allowed 15 minutes to speak and introduce themselves to present their vision and platform. The candidates have agreed to focus on their own experiences and vision that they hope to bring to Burr Ridge and refrain from personal attacks. As for the audience, we ask that there be no interrupting commentary, no booing or clapping or otherwise. While we really don't anticipate that to be an issue, just a friendly reminder that this is a place of worship, and so we do reserve the right to ask any attendee to leave if these guidelines are not upheld. Following the individual talks, we will have, so following the individual talks, we will have a 20-minute or so question and answer session that will take the form of written questions only. Since this is a race where the votes of the Burr Ridge residents are the ones that will count, we hope to prioritize those. And so what you'll see is we have volunteers ready with note cards, and you'll find note cards on the seats. And if you could, and there are pens, and we ask that along with your question, if you could just jot down your Burr Ridge address, no name necessary, just a Burr Ridge address, so we can make sure of that prioritization. Finally, one last note, the issue of the D86 referendum. We recognize this is a very important issue to everybody, to many people within Burr Ridge and outside of Burr Ridge. However, the focus of tonight's forum is not on the D86 referendum, but what we have done is we've asked each candidate to present their stand in regards to the referendum, and during the Q&A we will choose one question regarding the referendum. We really want to make sure that other issues and questions from Burr Ridge residents are addressed and discussed tonight. I apologize for the lengthy introduction, so thank you. We will begin. I am going to introduce first Zach Mottl. Zach was born and raised in Burr Ridge and attended Gower Schools and Hinsdale South High School. He is currently Chief Alignment Officer at Atlas Toolworks, a business that has been run and operated by the Mottl family for 4 generations. Zach has been a trustee at the Village of Burr Ridge since 2017 and has served on the Economic Development Committee since 2009. Zach.
Thank you, Salwa.
Sure.
I'd like to use my hands, so I'll try to have this set up right. Great. Well, it's really an honor to be here tonight. Thank you for having me here at the Mecca Center. It's really wonderful, and wonderful to see you all here and to see this engagement. I really encourage this type of engagement and these open discussions, and I hope that this is the first of hopefully many discussions that we'll have together. But besides thanking you, I also do want to also wish you peace, so peace be with you all tonight. And again, thank you. This is so important, this election. The voters in Burr Ridge in April, they've got a very important choice to make. In this election, it's about the past versus the future. And as a lifelong resident of Burr Ridge, I know this community. Unlike my opponent, who's from New York, I grew up here, and I did go to school here. I love our village, and I want to help lead us into the future. And in this village, we pay some of the highest property taxes in the nation, and I do not believe that our residents need to pay a penny more. And that's why I've led the fight against higher taxes on Burr Ridge residents. And as your village president, I will work every day to help you lower your taxes. Now, as part of that, I'm leading the fight to ensure our high school district provides our children a 21st century education in an equal, efficient, and affordable way. And when D86 attempted to push through an unfair $166 million tax increase, which would have cost us over $242 million with interest, I led the fight against it, funding nearly half of the Vote No campaign from my own pocket. And together we stopped the unfair, wasteful, and unaffordable referendum last November. And unfortunately now, we're fighting against a new $140 million tax hike referendum that is almost exactly the same as what we saw last November. But thanks to our efforts, District 86 has finally admitted to the unequal opportunity in the school district. And I will continue fighting to ensure that Burridge children are treated fairly and equally by our school district, and that our property tax dollars are used efficiently in that process. Now on the village board, I'm fighting for fiscal responsibility there too, and I'm rooting out and eliminating waste. I'm working to reduce our reliance on aggressive income taxes, which are especially burdensome on seniors and people with fixed incomes. And I'm trying to ensure that we follow a sound fiscal policy. I've insisted that our village pass and then follow a balanced budget policy. And I've been voting against tax and fee increases here in Burridge, including the recent water fee increase. I feel those only serve to hurt our property values in Burridge. And I feel Burridge can find better ways to fund the high quality services like maintaining our roads, our water infrastructure, ensuring our residents are safe and secure without taxing them out of their homes. Now I believe we can maintain our finances conservatively and focus on funding the high quality services our residents count on and enjoy, like I mentioned, our roads, water, and police protection in Burridge. And we can do that if we're efficient in our spending to ensure our residents get good value for their taxes. And in Burridge, we're very fortunate. We have a large cash reserve, close to 80% of 1 year's revenues. So really, that means either we're taxing our residents too much or we're not putting our capital to good use. So rather than using that savings, that nest egg, to do one-time projects or fill budget gaps, they're going to come back again and again next year and the year after. I want to use that money to grow our village. I want to put our capital to best use. Uses where it can bring development, help grow our village and our tax base, so that we can see a great return on that investment and not need to raise taxes in the future. When I'm village president, we will have lower property taxes and higher property values. We will have more places to go and things to do in town, drawing people from their high tax communities to come and join us here in Burridge, strengthening the diversity and the strength of our community. But really, I believe our best path forward, like I said, is to grow for the future. And on the village board, I have been a leader for that type of economic development. And as your village president, I'll continue to champion for growing the village. Our goal is to create jobs, broaden the tax base, and bring in additional revenues for the village to offset the need for these higher taxes. And I've served on the Economic Development Committee since 2009, a decade. Since becoming trustee, I've started a number of economic development initiatives that I will be able to champion as your village president. For example, we're exploring the potential of bringing an indoor sports facility to Burridge, a hotel, and even the Basketball Hall of Fame. I've been leading this and I've been in on the ground floor making sure this happens. This project alone could include a new parking deck, and it would solve the Pace bus parking issues that many of you enjoy, that wonderful commuter bus down to the city, but have complained there's not enough parking. Could solve those and allow us to give Burridge residents assigned parking in preferred spaces. People have said to me, why don't we have our own spaces like they do in Hinsdale for the train? Well, we don't own this lot, but if we do this the right way, we could. And Pace buses, they could load up in a covered garage instead of outside in the cold or the heat in the summer. And the Pace property that exists right now, that could be freed up for redevelopment. So this sports complex, museum, hotel, parking garage, it would draw families from outside the community, sports leagues, and excitement to our town. This project alone could alleviate our budget pressures through growth without needing additional taxes or fees. And with my support now, the Village Center, many of you have heard, they have new owners. Now I've talked to them about what changes they need so they can fully lease the Village Center with the appropriate mix of retail, restaurant, and entertainment venues. As village president, I'll put my energy and my passion to work to make sure they get the support that they need in order to make the Village Center full and even more popular than it is today. And I'm also looking to bring new businesses to town, and that includes another popular grocery store on the other side of town, close to here. I'm pushing for us to look at vacant and unincorporated areas around the village for annexation and development. That expansion, that could even include this fine Mecca Center, could become part of Burridge and allow us to expand Burridge to connect with the amazing green spaces, bike paths, walking trails, the nearby forest preserves. You know, if we could connect our bike trails to these forest preserves around town, it'll help our village earn a Bike City USA designation, something that would be so important, and again, help attract new people and raise your property values. Plus, You know, I'd love to see this place down by the Des Plaines River. You're all familiar with it. You drive right over it and you think it looks like a mess, but really, to me, that's an opportunity. I'd love to see that cleaned up, turned into a river walk, a park, and possibly some new residential dining or retail areas down there. I mean, just imagine the possibilities. And nobody's talked about this before, and it's right here, right next door to us. But to do that, we need to invest in our infrastructure to support our growth in Burr Ridge. I'll ensure that we maintain our road program. I know many of you residents are very proud of the good roads we have in Burr Ridge. We do that by paying for regular maintenance out of our budget to maintain the quality and keep down the long-term costs. If we take care of it, it takes less than fixing it in the future. And I'll invest these additional revenues that can come in from the sports center, from these new developments, through growth, into repairing our sidewalks and our pathways and our parkways. Like I stated before, I'll make sure we expand the parking capacity for PACE so our resident commuters have the parking that they need. You know, there's even a possibility, speaking of commuting, that Burr Ridge could get its own train station. Again, the tracks are right here. The train goes through Lamont, goes into the city down to Ogilvie. You know, other towns have fought and gotten their own train station. And this would finally make us a train community with convenient access to downtown. Now, I've already initiated discussions with relevant government officials on the federal level, and I've got a plan in place. Once I'm village president, we'll start working to make that become a reality. It's a long-term plan, but we can make that happen here in Burr Ridge. All the pieces are right here. And as your village president, I'll bring it together with my passion and my drive and my energy for success. But it's going to take the whole community working together to make this happen. And that's why I pushed to revamp the charter of our Economic Development Committee. We just did this a few months ago at my behest to make it an active committee. Now they meet monthly. They've got new board members, and businesses and residents can be on the board now and make valuable recommendations to the village board. This brings our community together, and we can collaborate on how to grow our businesses and our village. And that's what I do. That's what I do every day. Unlike my opponent, he's a lawyer. I'm a businessman who grows things for a living. I create jobs. I employ nearly 80 people, and I'm manufacturing opportunities for our talented workforce. You know, I'm a nationally recognized advocate for manufacturing, and I've testified before Congress multiple times. I've advised policymakers in DC and at the state level and at the local level for manufacturing. And I've been on television to champion America's manufacturers and enact policy that supports our makers and doers. I've been a leader in the Technology and Manufacturing Association. I was just there this morning with our Cook County Assessor, Fritz Kagi. And at TMA, I served as the organization's youngest ever chairman in 2013. And I'm still leading the association's government affairs efforts since 2003. Now, I also served as a board member for the Illinois Manufacturing Excellence Center. It's called IMEC. You might have heard of it. It's Illinois' official National Institute of Standards and Technology Center, and it's funded through the U.S. Department of Commerce. It also administers the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. I'm also a board member for the Illinois Chamber of Commerce. In addition to all that, I serve on the Military Economic Development Committee, which coordinates the state's activities relating to defense and military industry. And in 2015, I was appointed by U.S. Commerce Secretary Penny Pritzker to serve a 2-year term on the Manufacturing Council, where I was advising the Secretary of Commerce on the U.S. manufacturing industry. I also previously served terms on the Broadband Deployment Council of Illinois, Governor Quinn's Blue Ribbon Taxpayer Action Board, and I've served as the Director of Government Affairs for the Illinois Defense and Homeland Security Association. Now, at home here in Burr Ridge, as they mentioned, I was elected trustee in 2017, and I've been on a decade on the Economic Development Committee, and I continue to bring business and jobs to Burr Ridge. And I want to use all these skills, all my life work, all my skills and experience, along with my passion, my energy, and my new vision, a different vision for the future, to help grow Burr Ridge. And as we grow, it's critically important that we do what's right for Burr Ridge. We're a unique community here. We're a diverse community here, and we need to celebrate what makes us special. That means protecting our image, protecting the safety of our citizens, bringing in businesses that fit our village's characteristics, and maintaining our green and open spaces. And that means growing our downtown where people can eat, shop, and dine, and it means providing fun activities and entertainment for our families, and again, of course, the safety of our residents and everybody here in the community, making sure that things like hate speech, terrorism, and all these horrible things that seem to be raising their ugly head in our community don't exist here in Burr Ridge. But the health and safety of our residents, you know, especially our kids, it's of utmost importance. And that's why I've led the charge against Sterigenics to keep our families safe. You know, you saw me on the news. I publicly condemned them and stood with our other elected leaders to seek an emergency injunction to shut down the plant. I insisted, and I made the motion at the village board, that we petition to join the Illinois Attorney General and the village of Willowbrook in the federal lawsuit against Sterigenics. I also supported Burr Ridge reviving the dormant Environmental Quality Commission. I volunteered to serve, and I'm pushing for a report from the commission that outlines what else we can do to address the Sterigenics issue and what we must do to ensure that there's not another unknown hazard lurking in our backyard. I really want to get to the bottom of that and make sure there's not something else waiting there. Finally, I'm fighting to ensure our children receive the best possible education. Burr Ridge residents, you know, we've not been treated fairly by our high school district, and this hurts our property values. It really is. It's harming your property values and our children. Every single Burr Ridge child deserves access to a rigorous curriculum in high school with all of the courses, every single one of them, and all of the co-curricular offerings that children in other parts of the district enjoy. Because of our efforts that I've led, the buffer zone was eliminated, and the district, they finally admitted to the unequal opportunity in District 86, and they've committed to fixing it. But as far as I'm concerned, they're not fixing it fast enough. 3 years isn't acceptable. Fix it now. But really, look at what it is. This is real, positive progress. This wasn't happening before. And I know we'll make even more progress in the coming months. So we need a leader who can guide us into the future. Not just another politician looking for a landing spot after losing their last campaign. We need someone serving for the right reasons, not someone looking to make money off the public dime. We need an honest leader, not someone like my opponent who cheated on his taxes and gave himself 2 pay hikes while raising our taxes and fees 6 times in Burr Ridge. We need a fresh face with the new ideas, not just another career politician. That's why we can't go backwards by electing a politician from our past. It's time to look towards our future. Please vote for me for village president so we can charge into the future together. Thank you for having me here tonight, and I look forward to your questions later.
Thanks, Zach. Next, I'd like to introduce Gary Grasso. Gary has been a litigation attorney for 4 decades. He and his wife, Janet, raised all of their 6 children in Burr Ridge, and he likes to call Burr Ridge his 7th child. As Gary previously served as mayor of Burr Ridge from 2005 to 2012. In November of 2012, he was elected to the DuPage County Board. Gary?
Thank you. Peace be with you. I was in Christ Church in December and saw a very lovely town. They are still recovering from a devastating earthquake that happened there in 2010 and then within months later in 2011. To see terrorism brought even to that part of the world tells us how divided this world remains and how we need to keep fighting against prejudice and bring communities together. When you look around here, when you look around Burr Ridge, one of the reasons, if not the reason, we are a very special community is because we are a diverse community. That has to be a mantra of our village, and we have to always speak out and fight against terrorism, prejudice, and elitism. We are that community. In many ways, I was part of that for a long time. I did not grow up in a Burr Ridge. I was the first one in my family ever to get an education. Yes, I am from New York, and I am very proud of my family and what we did. My grandfather got on a boat in Naples, left a pregnant grandmother to come here because he had nothing. This was the land of opportunity. It has always been that. People wake up in the mornings in parts of this world, and where do they want to come even today? To this country. And that started a long time ago with the immigrants of this nation. The Germans, the Irish, the Chinese, the Italians, the Polish, you name them. My grandfather was one. He could not read or write. My grandmother joined him 3 years later. They had 11 children. 9 lived to adults. One of them was my father. My father had a 6th grade education, but growing up in the 20s and 30s, they didn't have much education and opportunity, and he had to work and left school in the 6th grade. He met my mother after World War II. My father served in World War II in Italy, and met my mother right after that. My mother came from a broken home, again, from New York and from the Bronx. She never knew her father. Ironically, years later, when Janet was doing our family history, we found my grandfather. He had deceased. Ironically, where was he from? Cook County, Illinois. To this day, we cannot fathom how my grandmother, living in the Bronx, met a guy from Cook County, Illinois, married, had 3 children. He left. My mother never knew him, but that happens in life. I was the first ever to go to college because both of my parents never had that opportunity. My aunts and uncles never had that opportunity. And I was lucky. I was a 3-sport athlete in a small suburban New York high school, blue collar. But there in that school, we had Catholics, Jews, Muslims, we had Irish, we had Indians, we had Italians, and we had Negroes in those days. I was the only one on my high school basketball team that was of my color. We learned to be different people but work together. Team sports do that. We are now in the midst of division in this community over schooling. We have 3 great high schools in this district. We are that fortunate. And 40% of this district is not in District 86. The mayor of this community has to represent everyone and should bring everyone together. The mayor of this village shouldn't be taking a stand and calling people he doesn't agree with racists and bigots and elitists. How is that leadership? How can that person ever bring people together? My position on the D86 referendum is that you should all make your considered opinions known in the ballot box. It is not for the mayor, it is not for a trustee to tell you who's right or who's wrong. I pay considerable taxes. My wife and I pay $40,000 a year. Do you think we like paying those taxes? No. But most of those taxes pull your bill out. I can tell you as the former mayor, I can tell you as a District 3 county resident, a DuPage County board member, where those taxes come from. You can, because you can see them. Over 70% of them come from the schools. You have to make the difference in property taxes at the school level. They come from pensions. This is the biggest pension giveaway state in America. Firemen should get good pensions. My father, with a 6th grade education, became a fireman at the age of 39. He never had this kind of pension. Policemen should get great pensions because they protect us. School teachers should get pensions. But you have to look at the pension system which is killing this country and allowing people to retire at 50, get another job, get another pension, and retire on six-figure pensions, one or two of them. That is not a pension. That's where your property tax dollars are going. It is great to stand up here and say, as the next mayor, I'm going to lower your property taxes. I was your mayor for almost 8 years. I had great board members. I had great plan commission members. Do you think we wanted to raise taxes, your property taxes? We never could. The village lives on about $2 of your 100, 2 to 3%. Look at your tax bill. The village lives and functions on sales tax. Back in the day when Burr Ridge was developing, it was on development fees. It was on pathway commission fees. We don't have that anymore. So the vision of the village, my vision at the time, and the vision with a lot of other people, because nobody does this alone, even in a small village, was that village center. That property had sat there vacant for generations. It was the old prison farm, if many of you might remember, for Cook County. That village center was to be the future of Burr Ridge. Why? Sales tax, sales tax, sales tax. That's what a village lives on. The other thing so important is the roads in this village. You saw it to our neighbor to the north if you don't keep up your roads. The only committee I chaired while I was mayor was the Roads Streets Committee, because it's that important. But that takes $250,000 on average every year. All of these things that you need to do and want to do, you have to have a revenue stream for them. And Burr Ridge has always been about revenue streams and fiscal conservatism. I inherited that. I continued that from 05 to 12 in the worst economic times all of us have ever known. But what happened under my leadership with great board members and a great plan commission? We did build the village center. Not we, but a developer did, of course. We did build a new police station. We brought the Veterans Memorial into the campus so that people could go there and think about what our veterans have done for us over generations. We conceptualized and got past the first branded bridge in all of Illinois, and it's still the only one to my knowledge. It's a great gateway for our village. We brought Loyola here. We finished what is now the Marriott, which was dormant for so many years as a shell. We had great economic development in the worst economic times, and we did that because we knew we had to do it in order to get sales tax and to build a brand of Burr Ridge. I used to tell people in those years, this is a unique community. It existed for 50 years, and then we built our downtown. We explored a new zip code, and I will explore that new zip code again. We should have our own zip code. One of the reasons that we get confusion, if you even try to buy anything online, you put in 60527, and they want to send it to Willowbrook. There's no reason, and I can articulate why we're entitled to 60528 or something else. There's many zip codes that are available. What we need is economic growth in order to sustain what we're doing. You do that by developing the property at TCF. There's an idea of a sports center. I've been at meetings about it. It sounds sexy right away. We might bring the Illinois Basketball Hall of Fame here. Sounds nice. But what I want to know at the end of the day is, number one, is this good for Burr Ridge? And number two, are we going to get the revenue from it that we need? There's a concept of, oh, we'll add another hotel. Well, do we need another hotel? I don't know. I'm not convinced that that is the solution for that property. But what is the solution for that property is something that's going to generate sales tax, because that's what we need to progress on. Janet and I are proud to be here. As I said, I never grew up in a village like this. We raised our 6 children here. We now have 3 grandchildren and a fourth one on the way. 2 of our children have already left Illinois for Colorado. We have to do things as a community to keep them here. One of the best things we can do for Burr Ridge, in my opinion, is to have debates over important issues on the merits of those issues. It is great to say we want to do better. Who does not in this room want to do better? We have all been raised by our parents to do better. That's one of the reasons I'm here. I want to come back and be your mayor because what I have seen happen. What has happened here is that people are trying to win positions by destroying their neighbor, by degrading their neighbor. That's exactly what we don't want in this village. I have been a consensus builder since I was the mayor. Go and look and see if I ever voted on anything. You got nonsense about I voted to raise my salary. From $100 a month, by the way, to $500 a month. I never voted on that. The mayor got an increase in 2009 because the board said, you know what, Mayor, you've been spending so much time on the village center and other things. We have been spending so much time. I see a couple of former trustees here that didn't get paid back in their day. The trustees get $250 a month now for all the time that they put in. The mayor gets $500 a month. And people are going to criticize that. No one's taking this job. I'm not taking this job for $500 a month. It is nonsense, and that is the type of person. Do you want that in the mayor's chair? I am a consensus builder. I have been here and done it. I want to do it again. I can do it for you with your help. I will build consensus, and I'm asking for the one precious thing that you have, your vote. Thank you very much.
So if you have questions, you can just funnel them down. For the Q&A, what we're going to do is each question will be answered by each of the candidates, unless a question is posed to specifically one. In that case, the other candidate can or cannot, may or may not respond or answer based on preference. Question number, and each candidate will get 1 minute. We're going to have timers just so we can get through as many questions as possible. Question number 1, can you expand on the steps that need to be taken to make the Mecca Center a part of Burr Ridge? What impacts, if any, will it have on the Mecca Center? What impacts, if any, will those steps have on the Mecca Center? So, Zach, I think you mentioned it first. I'll give it to you first.
Thank you. Well, so I've done some research with village staff as well as with some state officials. There's a couple of pathways to annex property. You can do what's called forced annexation, or you can do annexation in other ways, voluntary. Sometimes it requires voting, but you know there's multiple options to do that. But the bottom line is you need to have unincorporated area, which this is. It needs to be adjacent to the village, which it is. And you know, once you go from there, we may need to look at state law, we may be able to take action within the village, but again, there's multiple steps and it's quite a lengthy process, and I wouldn't want to say that it's going to be done overnight, but you can see that I'm certainly committed to doing things, and when I say I'm going to get something done, I will get it done, and I'll put my passion and energy to it. So if I need to be out here knocking on doors and advocating and lobbying, I'll do that. If I need to be down in Springfield using my contacts to make it happen, I can do it that way as well, but it is not always a straightforward path. Thank you.
Oh, I speak very loudly. It's one thing about being a lawyer is that we're used to this. Any of you that have followed my career, I was one of the first board members, and when I was mayor here, I spoke about consolidation of the unincorporated areas into the communities. I'm a big believer in that because I think the little pockets of unincorporated areas make overall governance down here difficult. To my knowledge, there is no property on, and I might be wrong on this, but there is no Burr Ridge property on the west side of Route 83. Therefore, there is nothing contiguous on this side of 83, and you need to be contiguous in order to bring in the Mecca Center. The first thing would be, of course, if the Mecca Center itself wanted to come in to this village, to Burr Ridge. If they wanted to, certainly I'd be an advocate for that. You don't want to necessarily force any annexation. You need to do it on a volunteer basis. So if you can get the contiguous boundary and the Mecca Center wants to come in, I would certainly put that forward at the board level to see if the community would go along.
Sorry. Okay, next question. This is to both. Any thoughts on how we can keep the Sterigenics plant away permanently?
You want me to go first? I'll go first. Well, some of you might know that a lot of people stood up in August when the situation arose. I was amongst those first of others that stood up and demanded that Sterigenics close its operations and cease its operations. The #1 job of government is public safety. I'm committed to keeping Sterigenics closed based on the information I have learned about. I'm still very much concerned that we didn't know there were 2 such facilities in Burr Ridge, going most recently back to about 2002. And I'm still disturbed that there has been no release of the information about the testing, which only tells me as an attorney that there probably is something out there that's being hidden. You would get my full support to keep Sterigenics closed. I believe their lease or their permit might be up in 2020, and I will advocate that it not be renewed and that they move their operations out to a rural area if it's really necessary for hospital sterilization of products. It certainly isn't necessary to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, well, obviously the facility needs to stay closed. And I'll point out that while Gary was mayor, they were here operating in Burr Ridge, nothing was done. While he was on the county board in charge of public health, nothing was done about it. Now, I think that the real issue here, the real way we need to help keep it closed, besides stamping our feet, making noises, contacting our elected officials, doing everything we possibly can, I think the EPA has really let us down here. I think the EPA knew about this. And I think that there's an opportunity to even sue the EPA and force them to get rid of facilities like this altogether. The science is here now, the data is here, and the public awareness is out there. So if we need to take action and sue the EPA, I've already reached out to Willowbrook. I've talked to our village attorney about how we can do this. I will, again, as I do with other issues, if I have to lead the fight, I'll be out there doing that to make sure that Sterigenics does not operate again anywhere near this community and that there are no other similar characters like that operating in the village.
Okay, I think this is a simple question. Why doesn't Burr Ridge have a public library? We still have to pay extra for that. Anybody want to take that?
Sure, I'll go first. This has always been an issue. I worked in the law library while I was going to law school at night. I worked in the Western Springs for that library when I was on the library board in Western Springs. If you like that library, my name is one of many that's on the board in there because I was on the library commission at the time. One of the first things I did when I came here as mayor was to find out if we could get a library. It is economically unfeasible to do so, especially now with libraries being less and less used. The Indian Prairie Library District stretches into the Cook County side. We'd need an act of the legislature in order to de-annex out of and form our own district. In order to build a library and sustain it, because the sustaining of it is very expensive, it would be much, much higher on your taxes. Talk about raising taxes, that would certainly raise your taxes, and I tell you not to do that. And by the way, you can get a membership at either the Hinsdale Library or the Indian Prairie Library for relatively low cost. In fact, I think even the Falling Water residents, if any of you are here, you can get one for no cost at all at Indian Prairie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so I'll certainly watch the clock when I respond. But, you know, I think to answer the question about the library, it's the first time I've heard it. And I don't know if there's enough demand in the village to even warrant looking into it. But, you know, I think what you can hear is a lot of excuses for the past and things that we're not going to do. You know, I don't know what the right answer is for a library, but I think the key is, just like getting a zip code, which I did look into this year. In fact, I met with all of our federal officials, and I took it all the way through 3 appeals to the post office. We can't get a zip code here because we don't have enough population. Same thing with the library. That's why plans like mine to grow our village, expand our boundaries, bring in new people, those are the keys to getting what we need in the future, whether it's our own zip code or a new library. But again, I would defer to the community before we even start with any of those plans. And as we grow our village and funds avail themselves, I think we should survey the community and see if that's something important. If not, there are ways to partner with, you know, even, for example, this fine Mecca Center could be perhaps a place for us to work together to have more books and access. So thank you.
Okay, this says to Gary, but Zach, you can answer it as well. Are you still, Gary, are you still a proponent of consolidating Burr Ridge and Willowbrook police departments? Since you left your Burr Ridge position, you stated that you would make it happen. So let's take the first one. Are you still a proponent of consolidating Burr Ridge and Willowbrook police departments?
No, it can't happen now because we ended up building our own police station, and it cannot happen under the circumstances that we have right now.
Do you have a position on that?
I would just say that I think it was a terrible idea to ever talk about getting rid of our police department. Gary wants to talk about all the police and stuff he's for, but he actually did want to get rid of our police department, dissolve it, and merge it with other towns. That would lose our identity, lose our security, and the kind of responsiveness that we've enjoyed from the Burr Ridge Police. So I would never support this, never at all, and I certainly do support our officers and our law enforcement. Thank you.
Do we have another?
We've got a couple more.
Okay.
Hard to read.
Please explain your thoughts on local government officials getting involved in other agency or government issues.
So I can assume that means, you know, speaking out about the referendum. Now, I have, in my private duties, as I told you earlier, led the fight against what I believe is the wasteful, unfair, and unaffordable referendum, because it's the wrong referendum for this community. I do believe they should do a referendum. The community supports, and the district's own surveys show, a $40 to $50 million referendum makes sense and would fund everything that the district needs for life safety, security, modernization. I don't know why they're asking for $160 million when they could admitted, they've already said themselves, they only need 42. You should look at the list of projects. But, you know, I've never said this from the village board. I've never been in the village board level wearing my village board hat talking about this. That's been completely outside of my duties as an official. And I think all of you should get involved. I encourage you to speak up and exercise your voice, your right as a citizen to get involved and stand up for what's important to you. And I will always do that. Now, we might not always agree with everything, but I'll listen to you. And I do take input from the community. 76% of Burr Ridge that could vote no did. Thank you.
Gary, do you have a...
Yeah, thank you. My position is absolutely clear. An elected official, especially a mayor or trustee, should not be going and advocating for other taxing bodies and what they're elected to do. I'm sorry, but when you walk into that room, you can say you're a private citizen, but I will be recognized as the mayor. And when I then speak, people are going to think that I'm speaking for the village. It is wrong to do that. It is especially wrong to do it and call the people you disagree with vile names and racial epithets. That's wrong. I will always say that that is wrong.
Okay, next question about the train stations. Where exactly would the train station be? Will the current line for freight trains be used for commuter trains as well?
Well, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, but that line is down there at the south end of Madison. That's the rail line that does connect. It goes through Lamont and currently has commuter rail service on it now. There's no station and it doesn't stop in Burr Ridge. So there are ways to work out the freight issues and the commuter rail issues and all of these things, and this is really what you have to work with federal officials, and this is a long-term process, so I'm hoping to get it started now, but it might take a while to get it done, but it's been done in other communities before. I've already talked to some of our federal officials. I spoke with Congressman Lipinski. He happens to be the chairman of the rail committee, and he's given me some ideas, his staff as well, so it's not an easy process, but it can be done, and all of the freight, all of those things can be accommodated.
Gary, do you have an answer?
Yeah, we have so many issues to address in Burr Ridge to grow this community and its sales tax base. We looked into it very briefly when I was mayor about a rail station. It's never going to happen. The freight trains, the freight rails actually control the rail system. The commuters system does not control the rail system. So if you actually did the research, it's not something that I think the village should spend its precious time looking at this point.
Okay, we have a few questions. I'm going to rephrase them. This is for Zach. In regards to Sterigenics and some of the mailers that you talk about fighting Sterigenics, can you clarify at what point in time that was your official position?
It's always been my official position that we protect the health and safety of our residents. Now, a lot of us, there's a lot of information coming at us. I've been listening and learning just as you have, and I've spoken up at every opportunity that I've had. Thank you.
Gary, do you want to clarify?
Yeah, very quickly. I think I stood up on that right away in August. It was actually me that attended the January 14th meeting of the board that urged the board as a lawyer as to why we needed to join the litigation with the Attorney General and the state's attorney so that we would get all the information, because lawsuits have protective orders, and if you're not a party, you're not going to get the information. So I spoke at the January 14th meeting and urged the board to do that. They then went into private session and adopted my recommendation. Clearly, Zach was certainly not against Sterigenics in the beginning. All you have to do is look at his body language and what he did during the prior meetings. He only jumped on the bandwagon when he wanted votes to be the mayor.
Okay, and we're going to wrap up this community forum. Thank you, Zach Mottl. Thank you, Gary Grasso. Thank you to all of our attendees. It was a pleasure having everybody here. We look forward to future robust discussions at future community forums. Thank you very much.